Is self-care even useful? Should parents be making more time for it?
Let's talk about it.
Hi, welcome guys back to the Rooted Minds podcast. Today is the fourth podcast out of the 5-part series. So if you like what you're watching today, okay, make sure to check out the other podcasts as well. Okay, so today we have a very special guest with us. He's actually Rex. So Rex, let's all welcome Rex to the Rooted Minds podcast. Yeah. Right, so Rex, you're a psychiatrist resident at the National Healthcare Group now, right? Yeah, so you're actually in your 4th year of training out of a 5-year course, is it?
Yes, that's right.
So what exactly is the course of, like is there a name to the course?
Yeah, so I am trained in psychiatry. That's the name of the course.
Right.
I actually went through med school for 5 years first. And then after that, I graduated and decided I wanted to pursue mental health. So I decided to specialize in psychiatry. And now I'm in my 4th year of training.
Right, so next year after that you can practice already.
Yeah, I mean 5 years in total. So after that, we can practice wherever we want. But most of us stay back in the public healthcare sector.
Okay, can. Right. So today's topic is actually on self-care. Right. So I think back then during the COVID-19 pandemic, right, the term self-care was very, very frequently searched on Google. Like Google Analytics say that almost 250% more search back than before COVID-19. So self-care became very, very relevant during COVID-19. Yeah, I think understandably so because of all the stress, everything caused by COVID. Yeah, but what exactly is like self-care about? Yeah.
I think self-care is basically a concept where you take care of your own health.
Right.
So I think health involves both physical health as well as mental health. And it is a concept whereby you have to take care of your own health first before caring for others. So I think self-care has 2 dimensions. One is towards yourself. And also the other dimension is taking care of yourself in order to take care of others. So I think in a nutshell, that's actually what self-care is all about.
Right. What do you think? What is self-care about to you? Like what is self-care to you? What do you all do for self-care?
I do boring stuff that makes me feel happy, like watching dramas. Just like spending time on my own. I think like to some people, like watching movies alone or eating alone may be like something very lonely, but I like to do stuff like that. It makes me feel like happy. I guess that's self-care to me.
Right.
Okay.
For me, because I'm a person that play a lot of video computer games. So like for me, I'll categorize self-care as playing computer games. But I know a lot of people say that it's not particularly healthy or helpful. But for me, I feel kind of bad. I occasionally feel better after I play a game.
Occasionally. Why occasionally?
the team so noob.
You need to have some challenge for you to. Okay. Right.
I think personally for me, I feel that like self-care is more of like when I go down for a run or I have time alone, like what Jia Ling said lah. So when I have time to reflect and think about whatever is happening. Yeah, so I think that like to different people, there's like different definitions of self-care, right?
Yeah.
So is there like a one-size-fits-all for self-care?
Definitely not. I think based on what I said just now in terms of the definition, it's quite broad, and I think rightly so because different people have different ways of achieving, physical health, mental health, mental well-being, and like the examples that you all raised, I think it's all very different, but they all lead to the same goal, which is essentially good physical health, good mental health, so that you can take care of yourself and also have the capacity to care for others.
Right. So like this entire concept of self-care wasn't like really like popular back then. So but people naturally they want to care for themselves, right? But at the same time, I feel that like in Asian culture, like there's this thing that like when you're doing something that people associate with self-care that makes you feel better, right? Sometimes people interpret it as wasting productive time. For example, like playing games. Right? Yeah. It makes you feel better, right? Yeah. But then, like, I think it's the way we are brought up. Then, like, we kind of sometimes feel guilty, like that we are spending time that could be used to do something that is more productive, like doing work, studying. So, is this like concept like I don't know? It seems very common, but is it valid? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the Chinese, they have one saying, it's called 休息是要走更长远的路. Yeah, that means, you have to rest so that you can walk a longer journey. Yeah, and I guess sometimes that is what self-care is about. The things that you do, although for that period of time, it may seem quite frivolous, it may seem like you're wasting time, not so productive, but actually what you're doing is recharging yourself.
Right.
So that you can last a marathon, not just a 100-meter sprint. Yeah, so I think, it is true that you're not doing homework, you're not earning money, you're not chatting, having very deep conversations with friends. You can't do that all the time. But at least, indulging in some of these small little things does help you recharge. And if it helps you recharge, then I think that that actually achieves the goal of caring for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel that it kind of gets more, this kind of thinking gets more prevalent when you grow older. Especially if you are a parent, because you have way more responsibilities rather than being just an individual. Yeah, you have to take care of the welfare of your children, your spouse, and generally a lot of things to support lah. Yeah, so I don't know, but how can a parent be able to shift their mindset? Because it really feels that there's really better things to do. There's things that have to be done, and it's always a constant kind of lifestyle. So is there any tips you can give for parents in that?
Yeah, I think you brought a very good point, because as you grow older, there are more responsibilities. There are bills to pay, people to take care of, especially if you're in the sandwich generation. You don't just have to take care of your own family, sometimes you need to take care of your parents as well. And coping with your job also in this current climate is not the easiest. Yeah, so there are many things pulling you in all directions. And sometimes, watching that 1 hour of Netflix can feel like a very frivolous thing to do. But I always feel that, everyone has a tank, like a fuel tank. And there's only so much that you can give up to a certain point where the tank becomes empty. So when the tank becomes empty, but you still want to go on, you can't, because there's just nothing left inside.
Right.
Yeah. So everyone needs to know when that point is, so that they can actually do something to recharge. Yeah. Whether is it exercise, spending time with loved ones, doing something that they enjoy. Yeah. And I think it's even more important, actually, the more responsibilities you have.
Right. Yeah. I think what besides gaming and spending time with yourself, what are some examples of self-care that people can I guess look towards, because it really feels like it's magical thing, like self-care, you do something, then it makes you feel better, right? Then after that, suddenly the concept is that because you are better, then after that you are able to kind of act better, and everything kind of fits in place. So I'm not looking for a one size fits all, but maybe some examples of things that parents can do, especially with a busy lifestyle.
Yeah, I think not just parents, even for you guys, I'm sure you are also very busy. Also, sometimes
Yeah.
got so many projects, then you're don't really know how to recharge. You feel guilty for recharging. So I think one general rule is that anything that can help you recharge, to refuel yourself, it doesn't need to be a very drastic thing. It doesn't mean you need to spend. Sometimes we compromise, or we get affected because we think that we need to spend a lot of time doing that thing.
Right.
But self-care can be as simple as just a 15-minute break from after a few hours of study, or after a few hours of taking care of your kids. It can be as simple as that. So anything that achieves the end goal of giving you a break, of recalibrating your life, I think that itself is a good starting point. As to how to achieve that, it doesn't need to be something very big or drastic. Right. So I know of people that wake up just 15 minutes earlier in the morning, and then they kind of run through in their brain things that they need to do, and they tell themselves not to get too anxious about these things. That itself is actually a form of self-care. Yeah, so it doesn't have to feel like, hey, it's taking up so much of my time. Because I think sometimes when we feel like that, then we feel very discouraged, and that actually gives us more stress. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So with that being said, do you think there is a fixed time people should practice self-care? Should it be done daily, or should it be incorporated as part of their routine, or only do it when they're really very tired, then no choice really, I have to practice my self-care?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned there are many different ways that we can do it. I would say probably ideally, everyone should practice self-care constantly on the go. So that what that looks like practically is like, when I'm at work, I like what I do. I see me going to work as a way of caring for myself also, because it brings meaning to my life. And if I can keep that going, then yeah, of course, that to me is quite fulfilling. I know it's quite tiring because I'm working, but at the same time, I feel recharged, and because I gain meaning from my work. Yeah, so if you can do that constantly in every single aspect of our life, then of course, I would say that's very good self-care. But practically speaking, not so easy, right? When you're a parent dealing with a crying baby, and then you need to attend to his or her needs. It's not so easy. Yeah. So I would say for some of us, who are not so fortunate in that sense, then we have to intentionally set aside time for self-care. And my point is that self-care, the time set aside for self-care doesn't need to be, very long hours, long periods. Just start small, like every day, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. But it must be intentional, because if we don't say, hey, set aside this time, very soon we realize that it gets swallowed up by the other responsibilities we have. Right. Yeah, so start small, but every day we need a bit of this self-care time. Ideally.
So let's say if I'm in a situation where I hate my job, or I hate my because I don't know, I feel that as if I put myself in a position as a parent, right, I need to make ends meet. Then there are some things that are really like work-wise that it doesn't satisfy my need of I like to do this thing, but then no choice. So every time I do it, it gives me stress. It gives me I guess the question the point I'm trying to show here is that if I can't satisfy that part, which is that I want to have a meaningful job, then is it possible, would it be substitutable with just doing other stuff, like satisfying other needs? Or do I ultimately have to satisfy that need also? You get what I mean?
Yeah, I get what I mean. Yeah. I think ultimately the one question you need to ask yourself is what refuels me? What recharges me? That's the first question you need to ask yourself.
Right.
Yeah, and the second question is practically what do I need to do in order to feel refueled or to feel recharged? Yeah, so if let's say your job doesn't do that, then you need to find some time away from your job for you to do that, so that you can refuel yourself and then use that whatever remaining fuel to tackle your job the following day, because it's like an endless cycle, right? So if you don't refuel yourself, then you're just going to run on empty, and then eventually you'll lead to burnout and you can't function well. Yeah, I guess the struggle with a lot of people is that they move from one responsibility to the next, and it's seamless. So it feels like the entire timetable is just being something for someone else, right? I'm a worker for my boss, I'm a dad to my kid, I'm a father to my kid, and I'm a husband to my wife, So there are so many responsibilities that you kind of lose sight of, actually who am I? What is it that I like? What is it that I like to do? What are the things that actually I actually haven't done for myself for a long time? So before you get to that stage, I think it's important to have a routine where you spend some time for yourself every day. So rather than jumping from one responsibility to another, I think another question you can ask yourself is, what do I like to do for myself? What is one thing I like to do for myself, and that doesn't take up too much time, but at the same time can recharge and refuel me, so that I can carry out my other responsibilities.
Right, definitely. I think time is a very the factor that really discourages people from doing self-care. So having something that is very fast to do is very important. But then what if a person needs more time? I don't know, because it feels like there's so there's I think you're familiar with the 6 dimensions of wellness, right? So there's different areas of our life that we need to be well in, or satisfy our needs. There's different aspects lah. So there are certain there's one is professional wellness. So for example, taking time to increase your skill set, or taking time to do something productive. So that is also considered a form of self-care, right? Like doing work. Right. So doing work not because you want to find meaning, but doing work because it's satisfying rather a need. This is a responsibility I must do, so I am satisfying a task. So then that is a type of self-care also. So doing work is self-care. So then the entire kind of perception of self-care changes, like from the way people view is that it is something you do to take a break, but it's not really to take a break, rather something you do to make you feel better.
Yeah, I think generally. Great point. Yeah, so I think self-care is something that's actually active, not passive.
Right.
Yeah, you don't really get much self-care just by, hey, let me go Starbucks, grab a drink, and then sit down there and zone out.
Yeah.
I guess that can be quite therapeutic for some people.
Right.
But the therapeutic part comes when you actively tell yourself that, hey, this is time set aside for myself to recharge and to zone out. If zoning out helps me recharge, then by all means.
Right.
But you need to be very intentional about it. Yeah, it won't come along, when you're like you're sitting on the bus, taking public transport and zoning out. It may or may not come along, right? So you need to tell yourself that, okay, for this time, can it be commuting time, can be a time that you want to go somewhere, sit down, have a sip of coffee, can be even, changing your baby's diapers or whatever, right? But you can tell yourself that, hey, I want to be very intentional about this. I want to find joy, I want to find meaning and ability to recharge from this activity. Yeah, so like work, for instance, like you were mentioning. Yeah. If let's say actively you tell yourself that, okay, today I'm going to work and I want to find some way to recharge myself from work. Right. Maybe submitting a good piece of work or doing my best for this particular client, right? Then actually, if you have done that, that can provide a lot of purpose, satisfaction,
right.
and that adds to your wellness as well. Yeah, so the danger is, of course, when everything is about balance. So the danger is, of course, when you get in too deep, and then that's when you may feel start to burn out because you're focusing too much on one aspect. Yeah, so that's the other danger when it comes to these different domains of wellness.
Right.
Yeah.
But I feel like for parents, it may be extra hard for them to practice self-care, especially since like parents' love are usually so selfless. So there's like a need for them to see that there is a need for them to practice self-care.
Yeah.
But if you think about that, right, like if they are selfless, right, then if I love my child, for example, then I make my child feel happy, then I feel satisfaction for making my child happy. Like you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my love is derived from the other person's love. So is that considered self-care also?
Yeah, I think you can consider that, but I think that nicely highlights the thing about balance. Yeah, right. Sometimes some parents are so invested in the child that it no longer becomes a way to feel happy for themselves and for the child, but it becomes very stressful.
Right.
Yeah, so when you start, saying like, hey, all my other friends, their kids are this and that, they have this and that, how come my child like that? You start comparing, that can be stressful. Or when you are so particular about certain things about the child that may not really matter in the greater sense, then you stress yourself over all these things. Like what classes to send the child for, what primary school to go to. Yeah. I mean, those are important things. But then when you push yourself to too much over the limit, that can also become, rather than deriving some satisfaction from it, it becomes stressful. So that is also the other danger, when you're doing something that you like, but too much of it is also not too good because it can actually give you stress. Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So like too much of self-care is bad.
I would say so. Yeah, too much. Yeah, but you must know how to balance the activities that you're doing. Yeah, because too much of a certain activity can lead to overindulgence as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think like on the topic of overindulgence, right? Like so, are there certain like self-care habits or examples, right? That like is considered a bad form of self. Is there such a thing as a bad form of self-care, like unhealthy self-care?
Right.
Like not relating to too much self-care, but rather the action itself. Like, is there like more dangerous activities?
I guess anything that hurts yourself, your physical body or your mental health too much, definitely is dangerous lah. So some people, I think we need to be also quite careful about how we phrase the term self-care. Yeah. So for some people, they may say like, binge drinking alcohol is self-care because I love alcohol, so there's nothing wrong, right, if I drink so much alcohol.
Right.
Yeah, but we also know that these activities, can lead to addiction, can lead to dependence, and can also lead to strained relationships because you are always so drunk, intoxicated all the time.
Right.
Yeah, so it really depends on the activities. I think a bit of alcohol is fine, but once taken to the extreme, something that initially started as self-care may tip over also into something that is dangerous. Yeah, so I think the concept of balancing the activities is also very important. Yeah. So I guess ideally, it would be good to have a few things that you can do to achieve self-care rather than just, one thing. Because if it's just that one thing, then there's a danger that you may become over-involved in it. Yeah, like gaming, for example.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying you have any problem, but I'm just saying that, if you always turn to gaming, then you may just see it as the only outlet. And that can be also quite dangerous. You just need to be aware of it.
But besides gaming, I also have another one. Is I think everyone like sleeping, like taking a nap. So, but the thing is sometimes, right? Like let's say I'm doing my work like at 2 p.m. Then I'm like, oh, I'm very drained. So I take a quick nap. But then by the time I wake up, it's 7 p.m. Like I sleep for 5 hours. Then I'm like, oh no, I overslept. So is that too much of self-care, or is it like?
Well, I suppose if after that, it gives you the energy to do the things that you need to do, then don't feel too guilty about it. Yeah, I think we all need a bit of rest here and there. But of course, if you haven't prepared for your exams, haven't prepared for this and that, and then you're just sleeping the entire day, then I would be careful to label it as self-care. Yeah, but rather it could be something else. Yeah, so I think self-care takes quite a lot of insight from the person. Like you need to know who you are quite well to be able to discern whether something is self-care or is it just an excuse for not doing something else. Yeah. Right. So I think there's quite a certain level of discernment that is needed actually.
So actually, like self-care, like a form of indulgence in self-care is when you ignore your responsibilities. Use it as an escape rather as a form of making yourself feel better.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's very important to know the lines.
Yes,
right?
yes.
The intention behind it.
Yeah, and sometimes we can't tell it ourselves because you're in the situation, so it's hard for you to figure it out. And it's important to also, that's why, be involved in communities as well, so that people around you can remind you, like, hey, you seem to be sleeping every day. You should. Yeah, but I know you have exams coming up, so are you okay? That kind of thing. Yeah. So it's always important to have that check and balance as well.
Right.
But similarly, also it's important to have people to tell you when you are not caring for yourself. Right. So the flip side is also true. Right. When you see your friends or parents that you seem to be always hopping from one responsibility to the next, and when is it your turn, right? Because you are also part of that ecosystem. In fact, you are the center of the ecosystem. So if you're giving off so much of yourself to other people, then when is it going to be your turn? So I think it's important to always put yourself in that. It's like a musical chair, right? You also need to be part of that group as well, rather than you giving other people. Yeah.
This is very interesting because I came into this conversation thinking that self-care is very like action, like you have to do something, but now I realize it's more of like a way of thinking and a way of like balancing your time.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
especially for time-pressed parents, with demanding children.
Right.
Self-care is it's hard to find time sometimes. Yeah, but if let's say even small little actions when taking care of your kid can give you that state of meaning, rest, purpose, or even that like mental health boost. Even though physically you're tired, that can actually still be a form of self-care.
Yeah. I think like in terms of like time, right? So one thing is in terms of priority, how should a person prioritize their self-care over the responsibilities that they have to do? Like we talked about like self-care being also including responsibilities. Like when you accomplish responsibilities, you kind of fulfill some form of self-care as well. So like, what if the responsibility is something that you can't fulfill? Let's say if I put myself in a parent like during COVID-19, then because of COVID, then there was a job retrenchment. Then because of that, I can't find a job. So I think there's in life there's really gonna be this kind of situations where you can't like fulfill a certain thing, right? So in that case, would the person like how should the frame of mind be? Because in terms of priority, you know, like I need to get a job, but it's something that can't be done like instantly.
Yeah.
So am I right to do self-care now? Am I right to do other things now when I am having this big huge problem in front of me?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think I still think it's important actually. Yeah, and I think even more so during these periods when you're feeling down, dejected, guilty, you know, you're taking too much responsibility for things that were out of your control. For example, retrenchment, unemployment. Sometimes it is not something that you want. Sometimes it just happens, and then you also have other responsibilities that you need to fulfill. I actually, it's even more important during these times to remember who you are. Because sometimes it's so easy to let your external circumstances drag you down.
Right.
Yeah. So part of self-care is also reminding yourself of, hey, who am I? You know, when we were born, we were nobodies. We were just we were a child of someone, right? But we never had all these other responsibilities, right? So as you were growing up, you know, then all these things started to pull us in all these different directions, and then sometimes we get lost. Yeah, but that very, very first person that you were, you know, you need to take care of that person inside of you, because you are actually still developing, growing as a person, and we all do that until the day we pass on, right? So when you are faced with difficult circumstances, it's even more important to know who you are, to know like, hey, this wasn't really within my control, or, you know, COVID, nobody could have foreseen it. Yeah, and give yourself some slack, but at the same time tell yourself that, okay, now I need to recalibrate, think about what I want for myself, and then try and go for it again. Because what we do see quite often in the mental health settings also, people fall down a hole. Yeah, so when sometimes bad things happen, you know, there's a lot of negative dialogue in their brains that go like, you know, you're not worth it, you're stupid, you're useless, and that's why, you know, you lost your job. That's why you can't care for your kid, you know, that's why your wife is angry at you, right? But that's not true. Yeah, and what can actually counter that is if within yourself, you're quite sure of who you are. And sometimes to get that clarity, you need to have some time for yourself. You need to have that kind of care for yourself.
Right.
So I would say actually it's even more important. Yeah. But I know a lot of times we do the reverse.
Yeah,
because we start to busy ourselves. Hey, you know, I don't have this. I need to have it.
Yeah.
It's much easier to think of it that way because we are very used to, you know, having tangible things, right? Yeah. If I don't have a job, I need to have a job. Then okay, can ready. What's next? Yeah. But then the intangible things like who am I? What do I stand for? What do I need at this point in time? All these require a bit of time to reflect. Yeah. So sometimes we're not too good at that as humans. Yeah.
Right. So just now we talked about like how like to prioritize self-care in a life lah. Like so. When exactly, like, is there like a sign, a certain period that a parent knows or a person knows that they have to do self-care? Yeah, because it feels like, you know, like we mentioned before, self-care should be like a way of thinking. It's preferably a constant thing lah. But of course, there are times that people forget. So is there like a indication that you know you need self-care?
Yeah, I think for most people, they get into self-care because they realize something is wrong.
Yeah.
Like the alarm bells are ringing. It's one of those things where, you know, unless there's a flood, you won't go and build the levee kind of thing. So, which is why COVID accelerated this discussion. Because without COVID, everyone would just be like, oh, you know, whatever, you just go about your daily life. But because of this big thing, that one of the silver lining that has come out of it is, you know, people are starting to be more aware of self-care. And I think the flip side to self-care would be burnout. You know, when people start to face burnout, that's when they start to realize that, okay, it's time to, you know, take some time for myself. And I also speak on the behalf of, like, for example, where I'm working at, the medical industry. A lot of my peers are also facing burnout at this point in time because of the impact of COVID-19 on their work, increased workload and things like that. So burnout would be like you start feeling very tired easily, more irritable. You start, you know, straying away from your relationships, and people tell you like, hey, you seem a bit weird. You're not the kind of person that you used to be. And you start to, you know, not find joy in the things you used to like to do. So these are some of the common signs of burnout. So whenever people face burnout, that's when they realize that, oh, yeah, it's time to care for myself.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it's still not too late. Yeah, it's not like a one-way road where, you know, once you pass that stage, you can never turn back. Yeah, which is the good thing about self-care. You can start at any time, and there's always a chance that you can always turn back and, you know, get better again. So that's the good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there like anything that like people can do to remind? I know that there's like some self-care apps out there that actually like remind people about like when to do their self-care and everything, because so that they don't reach the stage of burnout. You know, so like just now you mentioned that it should be intentional, right? Like,
Yes.
like so we should be setting like a point of time in our day that we always like practice self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, do you do that yourself?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Oh, really?
So I think for me personally, I have quite a good. I think because of my training, I have quite a good sense of when I'm actually burning out.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So before I see the smoke, you know, starting to rise, I will tell myself, okay, I think that's it. You know, that I've reached my quota.
Right.
So one good way to detect burnout is yourself. That's the best way, right? If you can detect, hey, when I'm burning out, when I'm not, when I'm becoming more irritable. So that sense of self-awareness, and you're able to address the problem there and then. Like for me personally, I like to go for like long runs. So we like just dissociate and just like, yeah, I mean, I'm not getting knocked down by a car lah when I'm running, but to just, you know, yeah, I like looking at the long path ahead of me, and it's very therapeutic for me. Yeah, so I like to do that. That's my form of self-care, exercise. So I think one of the ways that I do it is self-awareness lah. But secondly, I think also a community, like I mentioned just now, is important. So people will also come and tell me like, hey, Rex, how come nowadays you're such a nice guy? How come nowadays you like some, you know, like some jerk like that, you know? So when people start saying that, okay, yeah, it's time for me to you know, take a step back and do things that I enjoy for myself. And I think a third thing, like you mentioned, is the use of technology, apps. Yeah, so I think apps is a great way I think because this kind of like internal barometers is very invisible. You don't know what's going on, a bit woolly. So when something is actually transmitted onto a screen, right? Now we're very used to that. That's when you know, like, hey, you know, my Fitbit say my stress level is 82 off the charts. That's when I need to bring it down, right? So I think technology has really, really helped with that. And nowadays people are very quick to identify these things through use of technology. So self-help apps like Calm, I think that's quite a popular one. Some of the other apps also available on the market really do help to bring that to awareness that, hey, maybe it's time for me to try and help myself. And also within the apps, they have some activities that people can use also, like reading articles or, you know, a bit of mindfulness exercises. Yeah, those things are helpful.
Yeah. So actually, I think like one thing that we didn't really touch just now is like on like things that you do for yourself. Like for example, going to watch a drama and something like that, right? When you binge watch it, right? Then it kind of gets a little bit out of hand. So that's something I struggle with personally, right? Is that when I set a time frame for myself to do self-care, right?
Yeah.
Then after that, I do it. Then after that, I just keep doing it. So I can't get out of my self-care. So that's a bit on self-indulgence also lah. So is there any like thing that someone can like how can someone have more self-discipline? You know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow, this one affairs of the heart is very difficult to address. Yeah. Yeah, I think well, practically, of course, the no-brainer answer is, of course, set a time and stick to it lah.
Yeah,
but not everyone can do that. I would say because self-care, remember, is intentional, right? So when you have some intentionality to something, is an activity that kind of also has some endpoint lah, usually. So sometimes we slip into that mode because we don't have an endpoint to our activity. We kind of like ease into it. For example, like you just at the end of the long day, go back home, sit on the couch, and then on the TV, that's it. But is there intentionality? May not be. It just may be your habit. Right? But once you tell yourself that, okay, I'm just going to watch one episode of my drama, after watching this is what I want to achieve. Once I've achieved that, I think that means that's the end of my activity, right? So for example, you watch a drama, you tell yourself, okay, after one episode, I probably should feel more relaxed. After I feel relaxed, maybe it's time to move on to my other responsibilities as well. Yeah, because I've achieved what I wanted to do. Right. Yeah. Because if there's no intentionality, then it can just carry on indefinitely. Yeah, right? So for example, it's like eating potato chips, or like, yeah, you eat one bag, then you kind of after that you feel shook already. You got the umami taste. Then you're like, okay, enough.
One bag is a lot.
Yeah. But then some people they like they just open without thinking. And then that's when they cannot stop.
Right. Yeah.
So I think the intentionality aspect is important.
So being intentional not only about doing the thing for yourself, but also intentional about when to stop.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And what you're trying to achieve out of it. Because once you've achieved that thing, then it's time to stop. Yeah, because there may be some law of diminishing returns, right? The more you do it, and then the lesser you get out of it. Yeah, so we don't want to get to that stage as well.
So that's like
it's like a lot of self-discipline, but like cause previously we talked about like responsibility being like it can be like a stressor, but I think for my case responsibility is the one drive that helps me control my self-care. Because like if I'm practicing self-care too much, then I know like I have work that I have to do, and like submission is like soon. Like although that's like a responsibility, that's like a stress, but that also pushed me to like take more control of like self-care to like to have like a cut-off time.
Yeah. So I think that's good. That's very useful. So the keyword is balance, lor. Yeah, balance and sometimes if you are too indulgent, community is important. I once again emphasize. If you got no one, if you stay alone, you got no one to care about you, then it's easy to slip down into those things. But if you got friends around you, you got family, then good to hear them out sometimes lah. They may, it may not be your mom nagging as usual, but it may be something that she's sending some signals to you that hey, maybe it's time to stop. Maybe it's becoming self-indulgent.
Right. So like I don't know, but like sometimes I see like I have some friends, right, and their families actually practice somewhat of a self-care together. So they go for cycling expeditions together. They go for runs together. A lot on the physical side, but what she shared with me before is that like this kind of like practices that she does with her family, right? And like it to herself personally, it helps her like maintain her stress and makes her feel much better. So bang on that point on like kind of family, So is there anything that like parents like how can parents encourage their children to practice self-care with them?
So I think it's another very important point, which is sometimes we talk about self, right? And we think a lot about self as individuals, but we know that the family unit in a sense is also an individual unit because it's like one big unit together, right? That's why we call it like a family. And for the entire family, it's still important to also do things together because in that sense, that is also another form of self-care for the family unit.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, it's the same principle, whatever that helps in their, physical, mental rest or well-being in order to tighten their relationships, in order to take care of each other, whatever that fulfills that, it is self-care. Right. So I think for families that can afford the time, that have a bit more adventurous, like to go outdoors. I think exercise is one great way to exercise self-care. Basically, set aside time to do something different. But in time-pressed societies or families, even at the end of the day, having a meal together and having intentional. So the key word once again is intentional conversations with each other. That can be another form of self-care as well, right? Because if you think about it, you may not be going out, for like half a day, cycling around the country, but you are just spending that 15-20 minutes to get to know each other a bit more about how the day went, and to do that intentionally, and that actually helps in improving each other's mental health within the family, because it's an avenue to like, hey, I'm listening to you. It's an outlet I share, because sometimes a lot of times Asian families especially, we just literally sit at the table, we finish our meal, and
some people they watch their phones or watch TV or anything.
Correct. Or sometimes it's very factual. The kind of questions that parents may ask sometimes is like, what time your school tomorrow? What time you get off school? When is your next project? So that's fine. There is nothing wrong with that. But sometimes self-care, that intentionality comes in when you talk about things that actually can improve each other's mental health, improve each other's relationships. Like, how are you feeling today? Or what's on your mind? Today. Or what is one bad experience that happened today? You seem quite troubled by it. So these are conversations that, a bit different. But actually, it's also a form of self-care because within the family, you create this culture where everyone's mental health physical well-being is taken care of. Yeah, so simple things like that can also happen. It's not rocket science. You can do it every day. Yeah,
definitely. So it doesn't have to be like same concept like your own personal self-care. It doesn't have to be something that takes out a lot of time.
Yes.
So to pass on the habit of self-care to your family, right? You can. I think I can also foresee that like when people do it, like when adults or parents do things, then they can see that their parent is good or like is helping their parent. Then sometimes the child might want to do it also.
Yeah,
I feel,
So I think there's a concept of modeling. Modeling
right.
is something because when you're children, when you're young, you are just picking up on things whatever you see, you pick up on it.
Yeah.
And then you think that hey, that's the right thing to do because my parents did it. Yeah. So it's also important for parents to model for their children, like and modeling, be it activities, outward activities like running, cycling, exercising. As a form of self-care. Modeling can also come in the form of how they interact with each other. So dad and mom, how do they speak to each other? How do they speak to the child? The child will be picking up on these things. And if they speak to each other in a way that is supportive, in a way that allows them to share their views, then that can also be a form of self-care because that once again improves their mental well-being, gets them more comfortable in talking about their mental health. Yeah, so that is also a form of self-care. Yeah, so modeling is important. Absolutely.
Right. I think just now you mentioned like when you are doing conversations with your children, being intentional about how you talk to them and like what kind of like dialogue you have also. That's also considered self-care. Like passing on self-care habits. So actually when you said intentional, I thought it was like, I go to my child and say, son, let's have a talk. I don't know. Like so it doesn't have to be like a very intentional, like outwardly intentional, but rather the way you act with your child.
Yes, right. Totally. But also nothing wrong with going to son, how are you doing? But it's a bit, I know, like if I imagine my parents doing that, I immediately cringe. I can see all my goosebumps all coming up. Yeah, but it can be that also. Right. Yeah, but I think when it becomes more of a habit, then it's less awkward for everyone. Yeah, especially when you start young, it's less awkward for everyone. And it need not always be the parents doing it. The child himself or herself, when they reach a certain age, they can also try doing things like that. Yeah, right. So that's all part of self-care in a sense of a family unit. Yeah.
But I think ultimately, although self-care in a family unit is also very important, self-care it should also be done on the person, like on the own, like personally kind of thing, right?
Yes.
So like there are some things that you have to do by yourself to make yourself feel better, like mindfulness, being alone.
Yes.
But there are some things you can do with your family. So you don't have to do it all the time with family. You must be able to draw the line to like satisfy your own needs also.
The danger I always say is sometimes we are two halves and then we try and make one whole with two halves. Like means you're not satisfied yourself and you look for satisfaction in the others around you. Yeah, but that can be a bit dangerous because when the other side wavers, you also waver. You are like so closely interlinked. So that is over dependence sometimes, and we see that in family units sometimes. But like what you mentioned, we should behold ourselves first. Fill ourselves up with things that are important to us, that we think will build us up. And only then we start making connections with others. That's actually a lot more healthier.
Right.
Yeah, so that when the people around you waver or when the connections are not so good for whatever reason, at least you know that, hey, I'm still very much my own man, my own woman, my own, I still have my own identity and you're very secure in that. Yeah, so self-care actually in an individual level helps to build up that sense of security as well in your identity. Yeah.
Right.
No, because previously, you mentioned about like intention, right? So I want to ask, is like crying a form of self-care? Cause like I know some people, right, as like they actually like they always stress about like schoolwork and work or studies and whatnot. Then they all of a sudden just break down. But afterwards they like okay, let's go back to work. Like it's like like you said, the tank refill already. Like after they broke down, they cried. Then okay, let's go back to work.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I suppose for some people it is a way to just let out their frustrations. Yeah. I don't know whether that means their tank is refilled or that is a sign that their tank is empty, and then after that they are still trying to charge on. So I think when you see friends like that, or when parents see kids that are being like that, it's important to check in on them lah, to ask them, hey, wow, you sure you okay? Like, I saw you break down just now. Is everything alright? Yeah, because sometimes it may be a sign that, hey, my tank empty already, but then I kind of just drag on and just suck it up and move on. Actually, we're all very good at sucking up and moving on. Yeah, all of us humans, we are engineered to do that. Yeah, so I guess important to also not make assumptions sometimes. Like if let's say, are you truly okay, or is it like you need some time off, or is everything alright? Yeah, so it's still important to make sure that they're not running on empty lah. Yeah.
I feel like that example is about me. We did like a group project together last time, and then like halfway through the project, I just suddenly cried, and then they just took like very long to like comfort me. But I guess it's really based on like person. Cause for me it was like my fuel was like gone. That's why I cried. But I think for some people it could be like a form of like release.
Yep.
But for me, it was just emotionally not very strong. You can see them like laughing as they're talking about the example.
Yeah, don't worry. It happens to everyone. Yeah, nothing wrong with crying at all. Yeah, right. Nothing wrong with crying. Yeah.
Actually, I know a person, right, that like crying, like they do it intentionally. So they tell themselves, okay, this point of the day I'm gonna cry because I just faced something very sad. Or something that something bad happened. Yeah. So then after doing it, they tell me that they feel better. So that's the thing also.
Wow, that's a very big talent. I think this person should go apply to be like Academy Award.
The person beside you also.
Oh, yeah. Hollywood need this kind of people. Yeah,
I'll go apply.
Yeah, no, but jokes aside, for some people that is actually catharsis is a form of self-care as well. Yeah, right. Catharsis meaning like letting everything out.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I always say, we are all like Coke bottles, right? We shake every day. A lot of stresses shake us in different directions, and the gas keeps building up inside.
Right.
We need to uncap. So self-care is like unscrewing the cap every day to let a bit of the air out because you don't want it to explode. But for some people, they don't unscrew so often. So they only unscrew like once a month, once every 6 months, right? So when they let out, obviously it's going to be a lot more gas coming out lah.
Right.
Yeah. But the letting out part is important because if you don't unscrew the cap either by crying, exercising, or doing something that you like, the bottle will just explode. So you don't want it to explode,
right?
Because then it goes in all sorts of directions and it's very unpredictable. Yeah. So that's when people sink into depression, people sink into burnout, and that's not good. Yeah. So unscrewing the cap is very important.
Right. So would you recommend unscrewing the cap like often or like at one go?
Often, yeah, for sure. Every day. Yeah. I personally don't like gassy drinks, so I find this analogy very, very, very nice. When I get my Coke, when I buy a Coke, I'll just shake and let the air out. I really let the air out because I don't like gassy Coke.
Okay.
Yeah, very weird. But I also don't know why I buy Coke in the first place. If I don't like gassy Coke, then I don't know why I buy Coke in the first place. But anyway.
Milo is the best.
Yeah, Milo is the best. Yeah.
We got 3 Milo lovers here. Yeah. So okay. I think that to find time to be able to like let out this like gas like little bit by little bit, it will be a bit challenging for parents. But although you said that it can be done like in very short periods of time and even being incorporated into your daily lives, right? But I still think that it is a bit struggling for parents to do it. Yeah. So would you have any tips for parents in that case? Like if they are really like time packed, and let's say they can only spend 15 minutes, what would be this ideal 15 minutes that they can do?
So I think the very first step is really a mindset change. You need to tell yourself that it is possible. Right. Because a lot of families, young families, a lot of my peers with young families also, that they always find that it's not possible I got this to do, that to do, this to do. But actually, you have to tell yourself it's possible. Right. That's only when you can start making steps, right? Yeah. To try and plan for it. So that's the very first step. I think a second step is you don't really need a lot of time. That's the truth. And I think one good way to think about it is spread. If you can spread it over the day, right? So it doesn't need to be like one big block of 1 hour every night because it can seem like very long. Yeah. How about break it out into let's let's say 20-minute blocks, 3 blocks of 20 minutes, like 20 minutes in a day, you know, maybe 20 minutes before dinner, 20 minutes before bed, you know, or 15 as a start, right? That's fine. You don't have to start so drastically, or you don't have to go all out at the start. Yeah, and then once there's momentum, that's when actually things become more fun, more exciting. You start to get into the groove of things, and then slowly you realize that, hey, you know, I can actually practice self-care together with my kids, together with my spouse, and it becomes a bit better. Yeah, so break it up. You know, you don't have to get too much time. Then the third thing is, if you absolutely got no time, right, for anyone or whatever, always remember that you have to also set aside time for yourself. Sometimes we may see this as spending time with other people as additional responsibilities. It creates more stress. So if you cannot do that with your family, that's fine. But also remember, always give yourself some time every day. Yeah, 5-10 minutes. You don't have to find other people to do it. That takes away some of the time and logistics. But you yourself, mentally, you need to find some way to give yourself time to reflect and recharge every day, 5-10 minutes. Then once you're accustomed to that, that's when you can start building on, okay, now that I have sort of taken care of myself, let me go and try and apply this with my other family members. And that's when you can draw the family closer. Yeah, so like what you mentioned just now, I think is a really good point, is that don't always look out for other people right at the start, right? You need to be whole yourself first. Remember, 2 halves don't make a whole. A family is made up of different family members who are whole themselves, and then that's when they can make meaningful connections. Right. Yeah, rather than over-reliance on each other. Yeah, so I would say these are some of the tips that I can give. Yeah, but we know that practically it's gonna be difficult. So but don't be discouraged. I will urge everyone to still give it a try. Right. And it starts with a mindset shift, lah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Alright, so we're coming to the end of the podcast. So one thing that we usually do at the end of each podcast is that we get the expert to say a few final words of advice for the viewers out there. Yeah. So anything can take it away.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's been a while since everyone has traveled because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you can remember when you sit on the plane and you watch the safety video, there's always a part where the oxygen mask drop. And I always found it interesting how, they always ask the parent to put on the mask first before putting it on for the child. And I think to me that is really self-care in a nutshell. It is important to care for yourself first before you have the ability and also the mentality and to be in a conscious state, right, when the plane is going to crash, to care for a vulnerable child or vulnerable adult that you're taking care of. So I always found this analogy very useful when thinking about self-care. So don't feel guilty if you need to care for yourself. Remember that you are doing it because so that you can refuel, recharge, and you can fulfill your other commitments.
Wow. Powerful message. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast, Rex. Okay. It's been a pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure here.
Right. So thank you so much everyone for watching the podcast. If you like what you watched today, you can check out the previous episodes and you can look forward to the next podcast, which is the last podcast. Right. So actually at the end of the 5 podcasts, we actually have Ask Me Anything that we will answer all of your questions on our Instagram account. So click on the link down below in the description box, and then you can ask some questions to Rex. He'll answer them for you. Then we'll pass it on to you. Right. Yeah. So we'll see you next week then. Yeah. Bye guys.
Yay.